Welcome to our week concerning the material on perfect competition. This is chapter 10 in the text. The perfectly competitive firm is one of the firm types which we will be studying. So we've taken a look at cost structure, and now we're going to overlay the revenues of the firm, so the supply and the demand, onto the cost structure and be able to analyze a perfectly competitive firm, monopolies, monopolistically competitive firms, and oligopolies. But this week, let's just focus on perfect competition. So a perfectly competitive firm is characterized by the following. It produces a homogeneous product. What this means is that the product is the same from one firm to the next. Commodity products are often a very good example of perfectly competitive firms. Commodities. Because if you're buying wheat or flour or sugar, these types of things from one firm to the next, they're pretty much the same item. So a consumer would be indifferent between buying from one firm or another. In a perfectly competitive market, we see that there are many small firms. So what this implies is that no one firm can affect the market price. If you kind of think about it as there being a large market, however, each firm supplying a small quantity to that total market because there are many firms, if that firm increased or decreased prices, it really wouldn't have much, if any, of an effect on the total market. Barriers to entry and exit are very low in perfectly competitive markets. This means that one can enter or exit the market with low cost of capital. So the machinery and equipment you need to buy might not be very expensive to get into. You might not have to buy expensive land or factories. And also there might not be huge human capital barriers to entry, such as having some sort of specific education. So what we see when the barriers to entry and exit are low is that if there is an economic profit, it's easy for firms to enter into the market, and if there are economic losses, it's very easy for firms to decide to just leave the market that they're producing in, say producing sugar. Okay, so we're going to look at the perfectly competitive firm from the short run perspective. And what we need to assume first is that the firm in perfect competition will seek to maximize profits. They will maximize profits where the difference between their total revenue and total cost is greatest. We compute total revenue as price times quantity, but how do we solve for total costs? I know that the book told you that total cost equal average total cost times quantity, and we're going to need this information when we look at our graphs which have marginal cost, marginal revenue, and average total cost, because we don't have our total costs on the graph. However, how do we solve for average total costs? How do we solve for total costs given average total costs? Well, one thing we know from our last chapter is that when we take total costs and divide them by the quantity produced, we're given our average total cost per unit. So this is our fixed and variable costs. What are the total costs on average to produce whatever we're producing? We can rearrange this formula by multiplying both sides by Q. So total cost divided by quantity times quantity leaves us with total cost. Quantity times average total cost gives us average total cost times quantity. So if we rearrange the formula, we can solve for total costs where average total cost times quantity equal total costs. It just so happens that where marginal revenues equal marginal cost is where the firm maximizes the difference between total revenues and total costs. Therefore, where marginal revenues equal marginal cost is where the firm will maximize their profits. So what was marginal revenue? Recollect, it's the change in total revenue given one more unit of production. Change in total revenue divided by unit of output. And marginal costs are the change in total costs given one more unit of production. This is the change in total cost for one more unit of output. So we'll see that where marginal revenues equal marginal cost is where we will maximize total profit. It makes sense intuitively. The marginal revenue would mean that we are earning incremental revenue on our product on each next unit of product that is exactly equal to the amount of costs it takes to make that next unit. So we're going to produce up until the point where the total revenue change from producing one more unit is equal to the change in total cost from producing one more unit. Where the marginal revenue, so the incremental revenue beyond that quantity produced, is less than the cost to produce it, we obviously would not want to produce further. So one thing to note is that when we look at these curves overlaid for firm and perfect competition, we find that the marginal cost curve intersects average total cost at its minimum point. And this has the minimum point on the average total cost curve. And we'll take a look at this when we discuss the firm and perfect competition in the long run. Right now, let's just work on the short run. So, how do we determine, these are kind of the main questions that you should be able to answer by the time you get to the end of this chapter, and something that I really want you to be focused on for the exam. How do we determine the amount of production which will occur for the firm and perfect competition? How do we determine the price the firm and perfect competition will charge? And what happens in the long run to the firm and perfect competition, and why? And we'll come back to this bolded point later. So if we look at our firm and perfect competition, we see that they will produce where their marginal revenues equal to their marginal cost. Now, I haven't put numbers here. It's not necessary to actually have the figures, but I would like you to understand the theory behind it. So we see that our marginal revenue curve is a perfectly elastic demand curve. The marginal revenue curve and the demand curve are essentially the same. They are overlaying one another. Why is this? In short, we are obtaining the price that we would charge from the market, the total market supply and demand. So this price that we obtain from the intersection of the total industry supply and demand will then be the price that the firm is going to charge. It will be the price the firm is going to charge, whether it's the short or the long run. So here the intersection of supply and demand gives us a price of P1. If we were to think about the quantity produced here, this would be the quantity that the entire industry is producing. So for the firm, this would actually be just the one single firm's cost structure and supply and demand. They are going to charge a price of P1 no matter how many units they are producing. Why are they doing this? They're doing this because there are many small firms and no one can affect the market price. They are what is called a price taker. So they will take their price from the market, and even if they're producing here, they're going to charge the same as they would charge if they were producing this many units. So where the marginal revenue curve intersects our increasing marginal cost curve, it's increasing from the short run effects of having at least one fixed variable. We will produce Q1 units at a price of P1, where our marginal cost intersects our marginal revenue. We're going to produce where marginal cost intersects marginal revenue because that is the point which maximizes total profit. Now, something else to think about. Is this firm earning any economic profit right now in the short run? And the answer is going to be yes, it is. It's earning a profit because it's charging a price that's greater than the average total cost at that quantity. So we're going to use the formula that was outlaid in the book as price minus average total cost times quantity equals profit. So I'll write this formula down for you. Where price times quantity is your total revenues, and average total cost times quantity are your total costs. If we pull out our Q's, this simplifies to profit equals quantity times price minus average total costs. Therefore, anytime the price is greater than the average total cost at the quantity we're producing, we would see economic profit represented by this rectangle here. Now, let's go back to what we were discussing a few minutes ago. We know that the firm will produce up to where the incremental revenue they earn in excess and equal to the incremental cost of producing the next unit is equivalent, because that is where their profits are maximized. But in the long run, the firm is going to produce at the minimum point on their average total cost curve. This is beneficial for consumers because here the price will equal average total cost. There will not be any economic profits in the long run for the firm in perfect competition. Why is this? So for example, if you see that there is a business out there where it's very, very easy to get into the business, there are low barriers to entry from a human and physical capital perspective, the product is easy to produce, and you know you can sell it and earn an economic profit, you're going to choose to enter this industry. You're going to choose to enter this industry because you would like to make economic profits. Knowing what we know about supply and demand shifters, we know that this will affect the supply curve for the industry, because when you enter and when someone else enters and when someone else enters, that means that there are going to be more sellers in the market. And when there are more sellers in the market, our supply curve will shift. So as our supply curve shifts, we'll see that the price in equilibrium is actually going to fall, because now we have more sellers in the market seeking to earn this increased, these excess profits, this economic profit, which I urge you to read a little bit about in the book. And as the supply increases, the new price will be lower. The price will fall because we have greater amount of supply. So this new price, P2, is going to be lower than our original price of P1. Because the firm in perfect competition is a price taker, they are going to have to charge the new price based on the new intersection of our supply and demand, since our supply curve has shifted. What we will see happen actually is that in the long run, the firm will end up charging where marginal cost equals marginal revenue at the minimum point on their average total cost curve. So the firm will always charge where marginal revenue equals marginal costs, and it will just so happen to be at the minimum point on the firm's average total cost curve, because where marginal cost intersects average total cost is at the minimum point on the average total cost curve. So our new quantity that we will produce will be fewer units, and we will be charging a lower price for those Q2 units, as represented by the new yellow marginal revenue curve. So in the long run, the firm will charge where marginal revenue, this price that's coming from the intersection of supply and demand in the industry, so this P2 is the same as the price we will be charging here. And we will also charge where at the average point on our at the minimum point on our average total cost curve. This is beneficial for consumers because consumers will now not be paying for the firms to have an economic profit. They will be paying a lower price for whatever product that they are buying. And when they're paying a price that is equal to average total costs, that means that there are no economic profits. So let's take a look at our equation. This is the quantity. So our equation that we use to calculate profit is price minus average total cost times quantity. Therefore, if the price is equal to the average total cost at the quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, there would not be any economic profits. So here, where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost is on the average total cost curve, ATC. And because it's on our average total cost curve, price equals average total cost, and the firm is no longer earning any economic profit. So in conclusion, we have reviewed the graphical depiction of the firm in perfect competition. I do strongly urge you to work through some of the concepts of marginal revenue product to understand the shape of the marginal cost curve. And also it probably would be helpful to go through any numerical examples that you can to calculate items such as marginal revenue, marginal cost, or calculate profit so that you're able to do so on our exam. The other concept that I haven't gone through, but I would urge you to look at, is understanding the difference between accounting profit and economic profit. What are we including in our models that aren't included in an accounting income statement? Obviously, our economic costs are taken into consideration in this graphical depiction of the firm in perfect competition, but what does it mean to say we're earning an accounting profit versus we are not earning an economic profit, or we are earning an economic profit and we're also earning an accounting profit? So I thank you very much for taking a look at the video this week, and I hope you can use it to thoroughly answer your discussion forum posts. Please contact me with any questions about this material. I would say this will definitely be on your exam in the short answer section, so please make sure you understand all of it. And again, let me know if you have questions. Have a great week and have a great spring break.